Behind the screaming guitars and pounding drums, legendary bands were secretly breaking apart, battling their own record labels and creating music fueled by pure chaos. Each song holds a hidden story of struggle, from bands so poor they barely ate, to another whose members were stalked by dark forces. These are the 10 best heavy metal albums of the 70s that will blow your mind. 1. Taken by Force. By the latter half of the 70s, the Scorpions were a formidable hard rock act, but they were at a creative crossroads, already courting controversy with their album art choices, most infamously for the band cover of Virgin Killer. Their lead guitarist, the prodigious Uli Jon Roth, was a psychedelic, Hendrix-worshipping visionary whose musical ambitions were beginning to stray from the more direct, song-focused path the rest of the band, led by Rudolf Schenker and Klaus Meine, wanted to pursue. Taken by Force is the spectacular sound of that tension exploding into a final, brilliant burst of creativity. It's an album that perfectly captures both sides of the band's personality, creating a work of melodic, powerful, and emotionally resonant heavy metal that stands as Roth's magnificent farewell. The album opens with Steam Rock Fever, a punchy, driving rocker that feels like a mission statement for the band's future arena rock ambitions, complete with gang vocals and a pounding, straightforward beat that was a world away from Roth's more ethereal inclinations. But from the outside, it seemed simple, until you dig deeper and uncover the album's true heart. The real magic of Taken by Force lies in the sprawling, epic tracks where Uli Jon Roth's genius is fully unleashed. The Sales of Charon is arguably his single greatest moment, a masterpiece built around a hypnotic, Middle Eastern-flavored riff and a solo so fluid, so inventive, and so far ahead of its time that it still leaves guitarists speechless. Kirk Hammett of Metallica has cited this specific solo as a major influence on his own playing. Then there is the epic We'll Burn the Sky, a beautiful, dynamic piece that moves from a gentle, mournful ballad, with lyrics penned by Jimi Hendrix's last girlfriend, Monica Dannemann, as a tribute, into a soaring, triumphant rocker. Even the album cover itself, depicting children playing with guns in a military cemetery, was banned in some markets, continuing the band's scandalous streak. A persistent fan theory holds that the increasingly provocative album covers were a deliberate, desperate attempt by the record label to generate controversy and sales, often against the band's own wishes, forcing them into a corner where their image was becoming more talked about than their music. This internal and external friction defined the era, a band breaking apart but creating a timeless monument in the process, with Roth leaving shortly after to pursue his solo vision. While the Scorpions perfected melodic fire, another British band was capturing lightning in a bottle with their own German guitar hero, creating the perfect live-in-the-studio rock record. 2. Lights Out. There are studio albums that sound polished and live albums that sound raw. And then there is UFO's Lights Out, a studio album that crackles with the electrifying, unpredictable energy of a band at the absolute zenith of their live powers. By this point, the British hard rockers had been elevated to god-tier status by the recruitment of the teenage German guitar phenom Michael Schenker. His fiery, melodic, and perfectly structured guitar playing gave the band a weapon few could match. However, Schenker was also notoriously volatile and unreliable, prone to disappearing mid-tour due to stage fright and substance violence, a constant source of chaos that fueled the band's dangerous reputation. Lights Out is the album where his partnership with the street-tough vocals of Phil Mogg and the rock-solid songwriting of the band reached its absolute peak. Produced by Ron Nevison, the album has a punch and clarity that captured their live energy while giving it a radio-friendly sheen. The album is a relentless barrage of anthems. The title track, with its iconic siren intro and driving riff, is a pure shot of adrenaline. Too Hot to Handle is a swaggering barroom rocker with an irresistible chorus. But just as you think you have the album figured out as a collection of killer singles, things look normal until they weren't. The band then unleashes Love to Love, one of the most beautiful and epic rock ballads ever recorded. It's a 7-minute journey that moves through delicate piano passages, soaring orchestral arrangements, and one of Schenker's most emotionally resonant and breathtaking guitar solos. A long-standing fan theory, fueled by Schenker's abrupt departures and mysterious persona, is that he was never truly comfortable with the band's straight-ahead rock direction. The theory suggests that the more epic, classically influenced tracks like Love to Love were a glimpse into the solo artist he desperately wanted to be, making his eventual exit not just a matter of personal turmoil, but of profound artistic frustration. The album's incredible balance between high-energy rockers and ambitious, sprawling epics is what makes it a masterpiece. It feels like a greatest hits collection, except all the songs were brand new. UFO's blend of melodic solos and tough riffs was masterful, but our next album stripped away the complexity for pure high-voltage swagger, delivering a final glorious sermon from one of rock's most iconic frontmen. 3. Highway to Hell. For most of the 70s, AC/DC were a raw, primal force of nature, a pub rock band with a bluesy, high-voltage sound that was beloved by a dedicated fan base but had yet to achieve global domination. Highway to Hell is the album that changed everything. Under the guidance of producer Robert "Mutt" Lang, brought in after the band's American label, Atlantic Records, rejected their first attempt at the album with their longtime producer duo, Harry Vanda and George Young, the band's sound was sanded down, polished, and focused into a weapon of mass appeal without sacrificing an ounce of its raw power. It's the sound of a bar band graduating to stadiums, and it's the final, glorious showcase for the witty, lecherous, and utterly unique genius of frontman Bon Scott. From the opening chords of the title track, the album is a masterclass in minimalist, riff-driven rock and roll. Every song is a potential hit. Girls Got Rhythm is a pure shot of boogie rock swagger. Walk All Over You is a masterclass in tension and release. Touch Too Much features one of the most infectious choruses the band ever wrote. The wild part is, this newfound accessibility and polish, especially the use of layered backing vocals and a cleaner guitar tone, was initially a point of contention, but it was precisely this approach that turned AC/DC into a global phenomenon. Mutt Lang didn't change the band. He simply gave them the focus and firepower to conquer the world. The title itself caused a scandal with the Highway to Hell concept, and the cover photo of Angus with devil horns, leading to protests from religious groups and cementing their rebellious image. Tragically, this would be his swan song, as Bon Scott died just months after the album's release from acute alcohol poisoning after a night of heavy drinking in London. This has led to one of rock's most enduring and somber fan theories, that the lyrics on Highway to Hell, particularly the title track, "Don't Stop Me, and If You Want Blood, You've Got It," were a premonition, a cry for help from a man who knew the relentless touring and hard-living lifestyle was catching up to him. Listeners point to the fatalistic swagger of the lyrics as Bon's poetic, tragic farewell, a final, defiant roar before the end of the road. AC/DC defined rock and roll heaviness, but another trio was about to inject the sound with raw punk venom, cranking up the speed and changing the rules of aggression forever. 4. Overkey. There is heavy metal before Overkey, and there is heavy metal after Overkey. This album is a genuine year zero moment for heavy music, a record that drew a line in the sand and kicked off an arms race of speed and aggression that would lead directly to thrash, speed metal, and all forms of extreme music. Motorhead didn't just play fast, they weaponized speed. The title track, with Phil "Filthy" Animal Taylor's revolutionary double-bass drumming intro, was a shock to the system. It was the sound of a new kind of engine, a relentless, churning rhythm that was less about keeping time and more about generating pure, visceral power. The album is a perfect storm created by three uniquely misfit musicians. Lemmy Kilmister didn't play the bass like a bass player. He played it like a rhythm guitarist, using distorted, powerful chords on his Rickenbacker to create a roaring wall of sound. Fast Eddie Clarke's guitar playing was a greasy, frantic take on the blues, full of wild bends and raw, untamed energy. And Filthy Animal's drumming was pure chaos, barely contained within a beat. The band themselves were notorious for their intake of speed and booze, a lifestyle that fueled their music's frantic pace. And then something totally unexpected happened. This unholy trinity of noise and fury somehow combined to create songs that were incredibly catchy. Tracks like Stay Clean, I Won't Pay Your Price, and No Class are punk-infused rock and roll anthems, while Metropolis shows a band capable of a hypnotic mid-tempo groove. Lemmy's controversial hobby of collecting Nazi memorabilia also began to draw public attention during this period, adding another layer to their outlaw image, though he always insisted it was for historical interest, not ideological sympathy. This led to a fan theory that the band's Iron Cross imagery was a deliberate attempt to shock and alienate the mainstream, a punk rock tactic designed to ensure they would only be loved by true outsiders and rebels. Overkey is the sound of a band inventing a genre in real time. It was too heavy and dirty for the punks, and too fast and raw for the traditional metalheads. It existed in its own universe, a universe that countless bands would soon rush to inhabit. It's a raw, exhilarating, and absolutely essential piece of heavy metal history. Motorhead forged the sound of speed, but another band was about to forge the very soul of epic fantasy metal, led by a diminutive singer with a colossal voice. 5. Rising. If Overkey was a greasy motorcycle crashing through a pub window, Rainbow's Rising is a stone cathedral being built by wizards and dragons. This album is the absolute pinnacle of epic fantasy-driven heavy metal, a work of such grandeur and ambition that it still feels breathtaking today. It is the result of a perfect lightning-in-a-bottle collaboration between three titans of rock: the moody, virtuosic guitarist Ritchie Blackmore, the thunderous, powerful drummer Cozy Powell, and the incomparable vocalist and lyricist Ronnie James Dio. However, this perfect collaboration was famously volatile. Blackmore was a notorious tyrant, firing the entire original lineup of Rainbow Save for Dio after the first album because he disliked their playing styles, establishing a pattern of ruthlessness that would define the band's history. The album is short, just 6 songs, but every moment is monumental. Side 1 features powerful, driving rockers like Tarot Woman and Starstruck. But it's Side 2 that elevates Rising into the realm of myth. It consists of just 2 songs, Stargazer and A Light in the Black. The former is an 8.5-minute epic featuring the Munich Philharmonic Orchestra, a tale of a wizard's folly set to one of the most powerful and exotic riffs Blackmore ever wrote. Dio's performance is a masterclass in storytelling, his voice soaring over the symphonic majesty. It all boils down to this one twist. Just when you think the album can't get any more epic, it transitions into A Light in the Black, a frantic, high-speed chase featuring one of the most insane keyboard and guitar solo duels ever recorded. The lineup that created this masterpiece would itself not last long, as Blackmore's infamous revolving door policy would soon see bassist Jimmy Bain and keyboardist Tony Carey fired, adding to the band's legacy of brilliant but short-lived lineups. Fan theories have long swirled that the story of Stargazer is actually an allegory for the band itself, with the tyrannical wizard representing Ritchie Blackmore, enslaving the people his bandmates to build his tower of musical ambition, only to ultimately fail alone. The production, handled by Martin Birch, is colossal, earning the album the nickname the Cathedral of Sound. Rising is the definitive statement of fantasy metal. It proved that heavy metal could be intelligent, literate, and as musically ambitious as any form of art, creating a world so vivid you could step right into it. Rainbow built a tower to the stars, but our next band laid down the definitive legal text for heavy metal, codifying its laws with twin guitars and an operatic scream. 6. Sad Wings of Destiny. If Black Sabbath invented heavy metal, Judas Priest defined it. Their debut album, Rock-a-Rolla, was a competent but unremarkable slice of 70s hard rock. Sad Wings of Destiny is the sound of a band undergoing a startling metamorphosis, shedding their blues rock skin and emerging as the chrome and leather-clad metal gods we know today. This album was recorded under extreme duress. The band was so poor due to their terrible record deal with the small label Gull Records that they were living off one meal a day and working side jobs. This frustration and darkness fueled the album's creation, giving it an authentic edge of despair and anger. The financial strain was so severe that guitarist Glenn Tipton recalls the band members taking manual labor jobs. Tipton himself worked as a gardener, while bassist Ian Hill worked as a delivery driver. This hand-to-mouth existence created a pressure cooker environment where the music became their only escape and their sole focus. The band has since described this period as a time of immense artistic creativity, born directly from their personal suffering. The bleak industrial landscape of their native Birmingham, a city still recovering from the scars of World War II, further seeped into the sonic tapestry of the album, contributing to its grim and melancholic atmosphere. The band's hunger, both literal and metaphorical, is palpable in every note. The album is a dark, gothic, and incredibly ambitious work. The centerpiece is the multi-part epic, Victim of Changes, a song that serves as a blueprint for the entire genre, with its dynamic shifts, menacing riffs, and dramatic storytelling. But the album's true innovation lies in its twin guitar attack. Here's where it all takes a sharp turn. The interplay between K.K. Downing and Glenn Tipton wasn't just about playing solos. They were weaving intricate, harmonized melodies that became as crucial as the vocal lines. This technique would become the single most important guitar style in heavy metal. Then there's Rob Halford. On this album, he transforms into the metal god, his voice a versatile instrument capable of a guttural snarl, a melodic croon, and the piercing operatic falsetto that would become his trademark. The band's iconic leather and studs image was also beginning to form, heavily influenced by Halford's private immersion in the gay leather subculture, a fact he kept hidden from the public for decades. This album was so good that it allowed them to break their contract with Gull and sign with the major label CBS. This led to a bitter dispute where Gull Records retained the rights to these first two albums, repackaging and re-releasing them for years to cash in on Priest's later success. A persistent fan theory surrounding this era is that the fallen angels imagery on the cover and the dark, almost despairing tone of the album represent the band's own feelings of being trapped and betrayed by their original label, making Sad Wings of Destiny not just a musical statement, but a deeply personal cry for liberation from their own commercial servitude. The band lost all royalties from these early recordings, a financial blow that stung for years and fostered a deep-seated mistrust of the music industry. The most significant scandal to emerge from this period, however, would surface years later. In 1990, the band was the subject of a highly publicized subliminal message lawsuit. 7. Machine Head. Some albums are great because of careful planning and meticulous studio work, and some, like Deep Purple's Machine Head, are great because of pure, unadulterated chaos. This is the album that contains two of the most iconic songs in rock history, Smoke on the Water and Highway Star. But the entire record is a masterclass in heavy, bluesy, and brilliantly performed hard rock, the absolute pinnacle of the legendary Mekdesser II lineup. However, this telepathic chemistry was famously fraught with tension. The rivalry between guitarist Ritchie Blackmore and frontman Ian Gillan was legendary, a clash of massive egos that would eventually tear this incredible lineup apart. Their arguments were reportedly so intense that they would often refuse to be in the same room outside of performances. This animosity was not just personal, but also deeply musical. Blackmore, with his classically inspired, technically precise style, often felt constrained by Gillan's more blues-based, improvisational vocal approach. The tension is palpable on the record, creating a dynamic where each musician sounds like they are trying to outplay the other, pushing the boundaries of their instruments and, in the process, creating something truly extraordinary. The rest of the band, particularly drummer Ian Pace and bassist Roger Glover, were often forced to act as mediators, navigating the treacherous waters between their two warring leaders. This constant state of conflict, while creatively fruitful, was emotionally draining and unsustainable. The story behind the album is the stuff of rock legend. The band had planned to record at the Montreux Casino in Switzerland, but the night before they were scheduled to begin, the venue burned to the ground during a Frank Zappa concert, an event immortalized in Smoke on the Water. Forced to improvise, they ended up recording in the corridors of the mostly empty Grand Hotel, using the Rolling Stones' mobile studio. Nobody saw this coming, but this disastrous turn of events created a unique recording environment that gave the album its raw, live-in-the-studio feel. You can hear the room, you can feel the energy. Every track is a classic. Highway Star essentially invented speed metal with its frantic tempo and neoclassical solos. Maybe I'm a Leo is a masterclass in laid-back, heavy funk. Lazy is a sprawling, bluesy jam session. Space Truckin' is an epic, driving set closer. The interplay between Ritchie Blackmore's fiery guitar and John Lord's roaring Hammond organ is legendary, a perfect dance between two virtuoso lead instruments, a musical partnership that transcended their personal animosities. Fans have long theorized that the lyrical content of the album reflects the band's internal state. Smoke on the Water details external chaos, while Highway Star, Nobody's Gonna Take My Car, I'm Gonna Race It to the Ground, is seen as a metaphor for Blackmore's own fiercely competitive and self-destructive drive within the band. The scandals surrounding Deep Purple during this era were not limited to internal squabbles. Their live performances were notoriously wild and destructive. Ritchie Blackmore, in particular, was known for his violent onstage antics, frequently smashing his guitars and, on occasion, setting fire to his amplifiers. At the infamous California Jam Festival in 1974, Blackmore, enraged that the festival organizers were running behind schedule and cutting into his set time, attacked a television camera with his guitar, and then had his roadies douse his amplifiers in gasoline and set them ablaze, creating an explosion that nearly injured several people. 8. Led Zeppelin IV. It is an album with no title, no band name on the cover, just four strange symbols. It is a work shrouded in mystery and mythology, and it is, quite simply, one of the greatest rock and roll albums ever made. Led Zeppelin IV, or Zoso, or whatever you choose to call it, is the sound of a band with the power and confidence to do anything they wanted, and the genius to pull it all off. This mystique was intentionally cultivated by the band, particularly by guitarist Jimmy Page, whose deep fascination with the occultist Aleister Crowley was becoming a central part of the Zeppelin legend, fueling rumors of pacts with the devil and dark magic woven into the music. Page even bought Crowley's former home, Boleskine House, on the shores of Loch Ness. This association with Crowley, a figure widely reviled by the mainstream as a wickedest man in the world, was a deliberate act of rebellion against the established norms of the music industry and society at large. Page's interest was not casual. He was a serious collector of Crowley's manuscripts and artifacts and was deeply versed in his esoteric philosophies. This overt flirtation with the occult created an aura of genuine danger around the band, setting them apart from their more straightforward rock and roll peers. It was a calculated risk that paid off, adding layers of mystique that fans and critics continue to dissect to this day. The album contains some of the most iconic songs in the band's catalog. It opens with the 1-2 punch of Black Dog, with its labyrinthine call-and-response riff and rock and roll, a pure shot of 50s style energy. Misty Mountain Hop is a funky, keyboard-driven rocker, and when the levee breaks, with John Bonham's colossal, earth-shattering drum sound, recorded in a stone stairwell at Headley Grange with microphones placed floors above, is a blues epic of apocalyptic proportions. Offstage, however, the band's reputation for debauchery was reaching mythical proportions, with tales of trashed hotel rooms and shocking encounters with groupies, like the infamous shark episode, becoming a dark part of their legacy. This incident, which allegedly took place at the Edgewater Inn in Seattle in 1969, has become one of the most notorious and debated stories in rock history, involving members of the band, their road crew, and a groupie in a depraved act involving a mud shark. While the exact details remain murky and contested, the story has come to symbolize the perceived moral decay and unchecked hedonism of the rock superstar lifestyle. The band's excesses were not limited to intimate escapades. Their consumption of alcohol and drugs was prodigious, and their behavior often crossed the line into outright cruelty and violence, particularly from their notoriously thuggish manager, Peter Grant, and their powerhouse drummer, John Bonham, whose struggles with alcoholism would ultimately lead to his tragic death. Just when it all seemed figured out, after the folk-heavy direction of Led Zeppelin III received a mixed reception, the band delivered an album that was both a commercial juggernaut and an artistic triumph that defied categorization. And at its heart is Stairway to Heaven, a song that has become more than a song. It's a cultural landmark. It is also the source of the most famous fan theory in rock, that when played backwards, the song contains hidden satanic messages, including phrases like, "Here's to my sweet Satan." This theory became a media sensation in the 80s, leading to moral panics and cementing the album's dark mystique, even though the band has always dismissed it as absurd. 9. Master of Reality. If Black Sabbath's debut was the birth of heavy metal and Paranoid was its commercial breakthrough, Master of Reality is the album where the band became something else entirely, the undisputed godfathers of doom and stoner metal. This is the album where Tony Iommi, seeking an even heavier and more powerful sound, began tuning his guitar down 3 semitones. This simple act of detuning changed everything. The riffs became thicker, sludgier, and more crushingly heavy than anything that had come before. This album was recorded in a haze of drugs. The band's intake of marijuana and cocaine was reaching legendary levels, a fact they openly celebrated and which profoundly influenced the album's sound. The band's budget for cocaine during this period famously exceeded the entire recording budget for the album itself. Geezer Butler has stated in interviews that they would have boxes of cocaine delivered to the studio, and the substance violence became so rampant that it began to seriously impact their ability to function. The recording sessions were often chaotic and unproductive, with days lost to drug-fueled stupors. This environment, while detrimental to their health and interpersonal relationships, paradoxically contributed to the album's unique sound. The slow, lurching tempos and apathetic, almost disembodied vocal delivery from Ozzy Osbourne were not just artistic choices, but a direct reflection of their perpetually intoxicated state. The album opens with the sound of someone coughing, Tony Iommi, after taking a hit from a joint Ozzy Osbourne gave him, followed by the monstrous, lurching riff of Sweet Leaf, the ultimate ode to marijuana. It immediately establishes the album's hazy, down-tuned aesthetic. From there, the heaviness is relentless. Children of the Grave is a galloping, apocalyptic anthem that would become a metal standard. Lord of This World is pure, misanthropic doom. But you might think that's all. But wait. Beyond the famous songs, it's the deep cuts that reveal the album's true, terrifying weight. The final track, Into the Void, is arguably the heaviest piece of music recorded in the entire decade, a sprawling epic of cosmic dread built on a series of riffs so powerful they sound like they could move tectonic plates. The band notoriously struggled to record it, with Bill Ward unable to get the timing right until they finally nailed it. The album also features beautiful acoustic interludes like Orchid and Embryo, which only serve to make the heavier sections feel even more oppressive by contrast. A popular theory among audiophile fans is that the initial vinyl pressings of the album were mastered incorrectly, running slightly faster than the band intended, and that the true sound of Master of Reality is even slower and heavier, a concept that only adds to its legendary sludgy status. The scandals of this era were not confined to the studio. The band's immense and rapid success, combined with their youth and naivete, left them vulnerable to financial exploitation. They were locked into a punitive management and record deal that saw them working relentlessly while receiving a pittance of the vast fortunes they were generating. This sense of being ripped off fueled a deep-seated resentment and paranoia within the band, further exacerbated by their drug use. They began to turn on each other, with arguments and physical altercations becoming commonplace. Ozzy Osbourne and Tony Iommi, in particular, developed a volatile relationship, with Iommi's relentless creative drive clashing with Osbourne's increasingly erratic behavior. 10. Paranoid. Released just months after their groundbreaking debut, Paranoid is the sound of a band capturing lightning in a bottle twice in the same year. It is the album that took the dark, terrifying blueprint of their first record and forged it into a collection of iconic, unforgettable anthems that would define heavy metal for the masses. It is, from start to finish, the quintessential heavy metal album, a work of such profound influence and raw power that its importance cannot be overstated. It contains 3 of the most recognizable and important songs in the genre's history. First, there is War Pigs. Originally titled Walpurgis, it's an 8-minute anti-war epic with a slow, menacing groove and some of Geezer Butler's most potent and politically charged lyrics. It's a sophisticated, dynamic piece of music that proved heavy metal could be intelligent and socially conscious. Then there is Iron Man, a song built on one of the most famous and imitated riffs ever written. With its sci-fi horror story and Ozzy's distorted robotic vocal intro, it became a heavy metal archetype, a perfect fusion of comic book imagery and bone-crushing power. The band's image, coupled with their dark sound, had already put them at the center of the satanic panic, with religious groups protesting their shows and accusing them of devil worship, a controversy that only fueled their mystique. The band even reported being stalked by Satanists and having curses placed upon them, leading them to wear protective crosses given to them by Ozzy's father. This satanic association became a major scandal that would dog the band for years. The back cover of their debut album featured an inverted cross in the gatefold, which the record label added without the band's knowledge. This, combined with their dark lyrical themes and Geezer Butler's interest in the occult, led many to believe they were active practitioners of black magic. The band was banned from playing in several cities, and their records were publicly burned. On one occasion, a group of Satanists reportedly held a vigil outside the band's hotel, an experience that genuinely frightened them and led them to distance themselves from any overt satanic imagery. This public condemnation, however, had the unintended effect of making them even more popular with a rebellious youth culture that felt alienated from the mainstream. The band found themselves in the paradoxical position of being terrified by the very image that was making them famous. This unwanted reputation as devil worshippers was a source of significant stress, particularly for Geezer Butler, who, as the band's primary lyricist, bore the brunt of the accusations. He has stated that his lyrics for songs like After Forever from Master of Reality were a direct attempt to clarify their Christian beliefs and counter the satanic narrative, though these nuances were largely lost on the moral crusaders of the era. The album was originally going to be titled War Pigs, but the record company, fearing backlash over the Vietnam War, demanded a change. The real shocker was still to come. The band needed a title track, and they didn't have one. In a burst of spontaneous creation during a lunch break, they wrote and recorded the song Paranoid in about 20 minutes. This 3-minute blast of proto-punk energy, which the band considered a throwaway filler track, was released as a single and became their biggest hit. A lasting fan theory suggests that the frenetic anxious energy of the song Paranoid was not just a lyrical theme, but a genuine reflection of Ozzy Osbourne's own deteriorating mental state at the time, a cry for help hidden in plain sight as a chart-topping single. With other classics like Electric Funeral and Fairies Wear Boots, a song reportedly about an encounter with skinheads, Paranoid is not just the best heavy metal album of the 70s, it is the sacred text, the foundation upon which the entire genre was built.